I know you were incarcerated for over 2 decades, right? And from what I understand, you spent a lot of time in isolation, even as a teenager. Now, the question I have is like, how inhumane are the conditions of being in solitary confinement, and what impact does it have on your psychology?
Yeah, I did. I spent numerous years, in what they refer to as isolation, due to the nature of my offense, as far as having a homicide. Like I said, we was underneath in terms of the U.S. government, in terms of the U.S. politics, in terms of the criminal, and justice system, however you want to phrase it or look at it. That was the drum that was being beaten at that time. Is if you do adult crime, then you should do adult time, right? So you're getting these multiple penalties and consequences that are layered, right? And a part of that, there was this catchphrase, but there wasn't a catch-all in terms of what do we do next with this influx of growth of young people coming inside the judicial system. They didn't know what to do. You got to remember, prisons are based off of adult psychology. So even the questionnaire is how many children you have. They ask you things like how many people are in your household prior to your incarceration. What grade level did you accomplish? There's a lot of adult psychology basic things that are inscribed in that particular environment. So therefore, it wasn't even fit for me. So there were certain classes that I couldn't even take because I wasn't even an adult yet. I couldn't take like MRT, which is more reconnection transition or whatever, things of that nature that was built on adult psychology. I couldn't take things to even probably really address that I was smoking marijuana and having available usage, to alcohol. There wasn't even a psychology that was based around those things. So what it ended up doing, it created a further hole in my network, right? In terms of the safety net that I should have had, not only while I was out and free, and I came into contact with the judicial system several times. And when you go into your counselor, your probation officer, counselor's office, or you go down to the department, you see all these plaques on the wall. You go to that individual's office, you see all their degrees, but they still did not have the solution to be able to help and support a 9-year-old when I did come into their facility initially and back to back other times that I came up until I was 13. So it's the same thing that when I came into the juvenile system, I fell into the cracks and crevices of what you would call the prison culture. My initial encounter when I came to prison, I was 13. They told me that I was going to be going to a juvenile facility. I was in juvenile. I had 2 armed guards come and usher me after I was sentenced to 23 years, 8 months and 6 days. I didn't know how much time I was given because it was given to me in the form of months. And I hadn't even lived that long yet. But when they came in and they came and ushered me, they told me that I was going to go to a juvenile state prison or a juvenile institution, which is a juvenile prison. I remember getting there. When I arrived there, I just can remember just Seattle just fading in the distance. Like I'm in territory that I've never seen in my life, that's overgrown with trees and rural areas that got livestock. I knew that I was like, man, I don't know the next time I'm gonna be able to see Seattle. I didn't know the next time. I just felt like everything that I knew was literally fading into the distance. And it was like, now I got to strap on this different mental kind of armor. And then now it encapsulated my spirit. So when I got to my destination, I realized it wasn't the institution was Maple Lane School that they told me I was going to be going to. I'm looking and I'm like, man, this looks pretty menacing. I know that my older cousin, he was supposed to be at Maple Lane. So I had communications back and forth, and they had barbed wire fencing, double barbed wire fence when I pulled up. And the officers had to go through this security checkpoint. Before they walked, they had put, like the long handled mirrors up underneath the vehicle. They're doing all this stuff. And I was like, I haven't talked to the officers the entire time, but one time, and I asked them where I was going, and it was already tough talking about, when we get there. So when I arrived, I'm like, where am I at? Because I read on the sign, it says, welcome to Washington Correction Center. And I'm like, Washington Correction Center? That doesn't sound right. That don't sound like Maple Lane School. So what I ended up going to was the receiving unit for the Department of Corrections, where they send the adults. I didn't go to the juvenile. I'm 13. I got the picture. I'll send it to you. Right? I'll send you my picture when I arrived, which was December 22nd of 1994. Right? I'm 13, and all I can remember, I said, hey, and I told the office, I said, they told me I was supposed to be going to juvenile institution. They was like, yeah, they're going to classify you first or whatever, take you through evaluation. So they put me out on the main line. I'm probably on the main line 2 days. I go to eat, and I got this older gentleman, white guy, just staring me down. And anybody look at you too long without an acknowledgement of a head nod or whatever, and they look away, it's a challenging look. That's all I knew. Like I told you, I had to put on this armor, and I went right to work. When I mean right to work, I just calmly put my tray down, looked like I was gonna go get some juice. I walked over there, and I just took off on them, because I'm like, I don't know if you're trying to size me up or whatever the case may be, but that's the part of the psychology. When you ask about the psychology, the inhumane conditions don't begin when you're confined in isolation. It's all the way through. It's an open attack on your humanity. Just like it's an open indictment on being black in America. It doesn't stop, because it's in different segments that you find yourself being black in America. So that was a part of the psychology, right? But I know now that I'm older, he was just tripping that this little kid's in prison with me. That's why he was staring at me. It wasn't a norm, because I was one of the first ones to be ushered into that space during the super predator theory.
Did they keep you in adult prison for long, or did they put you back down to juvenile detention?
So in that instance, they immediately sent me to isolation. I ended up doing 2 months when I was in isolation, while they did the process to evaluate where they want to permanently situate me for the time being. They end up sending me to Maple Lane School after 60 days, about 2 months being in isolation. And that was a horrific experience. I'm just gonna be honest with you. You got people in there with all kinds of.
How was that as a teenager? First of all, you're locked up. That's rough to start with. You're away from home, but you're in isolation.
Yeah, I'm in isolation now.
That time, how do you process that mentally as a teenager?
I would say, I'm gonna be honest with you. My God-given grace was the thing that they looked at me for in terms of the detriment, being young, right? Being able to remove me from society for such a long period of time, in effect crippling my opportunities of growth and expansion, personally, professionally, and otherwise. I didn't know those things at that time. I didn't have that wherewithal. I was in the space that I was in. But what I'm going to say is the thing that turned out to be the biggest benefit for me, that I feel like most adults do not have, or they don't orchestrate properly any longer, is I had the gift of imagination. I was still a child. So even when I was in isolation, it was in December. I get chills now. It was in December. I can just think, I looked around a cell, it stopped being a cell. I was in my grandmother's den, watching them play cards. I see my brother smile. I see my mom. I was there. So I knew then the gift of imagination. And it never squandered. I had it from that very moment. So after that, I fell in love with reading. Reading was one of the things that I can say was a lifesaver for me.